Okay. Oh.
Basically install.
If I go, like, where do you want? Is it stand? Is it moving? No?
Yeah, you unmuted.
Sure, no, and it's all the client that specifies.
It might be because they're talking and I can't tell where that is.
Whoever maintains it to specify to that their insurance system is robust.
Can we test this out for just a sec? We have to talk.
Are you gonna say?
Hello, good evening, everyone.
There you go. Now it goes to me. Look at that.
So I guess it works. It picks up the sound and the camera moves to whoever's talking, but I think if we're on the microphone, then it'll show me, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Where is the,
resume. Sorry about that.
where is the camera?
Right here, but it's a 360 camera, but it keeps showing us like back there. It will. It will.
It's like a
Yeah.
360.
Which town you actually live in?
Oh, yeah. Hello.
No, I was wondering if it follows like the speaker sound or.
You can also follow us on the movement. Hi.
Hello.
Chef Andrew.
Oh, hi. Welcome. I think we have speakers. We're going to reserve the first row for speakers just because we have huge shares right now. We have about 108 people registered. So Kayla, why don't we reserve over there? I'm going to drive. Yeah, over there. Sure. Hi there. Are you here for the workshop? Yeah. Okay. Let me check you in.
Okay.
I'll let you do it and just keep that until it's all over with and I'll get it at the end. What else we need? Anything?
No, I think we're good.
Super.
Thank you so much.
If it gets warm and it's cooler outside, feel free to prop those open with
Okay,
rocks. and-
crack them.
Yeah.
Said crap. Trying to say prop and crack at the same time. Woo. Hello. Did you by chance
Register? Yes. Yes.
welcome? Grab a seat, whatever you would like, if you want to be close to the cooking and leave this demo, you want to sit on this side.
I have one on the front.
Okay. Well, we're loaning them, so I can, I still, yeah, I appreciate it if you set it up.
Yeah.
People up there, they're checking out. So, Melissa, can you go in and out of the store?
Yes.
Okay.
You'll just have to like knock or we'll just look for you. Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that you could, right now, Kayla is checking people in?
Yes.
Like on this thing. You just put this, and just outside, their names are on there.
Okay.
It's not
Well, hey,
right now.
see ya.
Yeah, I think
I'll set this up and then, yes, I'll go.
Yes, and then we're starting to do
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kayla Bentzel, and I'm the Sustainability Coordinator with the City of Louisville. I'm here tonight with Alyssa Bogan over here in the corner. Alyssa is the Sustainability Analyst with this town of Superior, and this is a joint effort with also Boulder County. So we have a few speakers that are here from Boulder County who we'll introduce in just a minute. This is the second workshop of 3 scheduled currently in the Rebuilding Better workshop series. And we do have information here tonight from workshop 1 if anyone's interested. As you all walked in, and for those that are with us on Zoom, you should have received the workshop handout this afternoon. And for those of you that are in person, you also have a copy of that. If you're interested in the information from the first workshop, we have that information along with some other educational information in the back. So feel free to take a look at that. So here's a look at our agenda tonight. As you can see, we have a really packed agenda. We have quite a few speakers, actually 11 different speakers tonight. So lots of information. And so we are covering a wide variety of topics. We're kind of splitting up the agenda tonight into 2 different sections. So we'll start with rebates and incentives, then we'll talk about induction cooking. Then we'll take a break for Q&A. So if you have questions about rebates, incentives, anything like that, or induction, that'll be in the first break for questions. And we'll also make sure to answer questions from our virtual attendees as well. Alyssa is monitoring our Zoom over in the corner. And then we'll move into the second portion of the agenda, which is heat pumps, and we'll bring up a panel of experts that will answer questions about heat pumps. And then we'll have some additional time at the end for just general questions. If something comes up, about rebates that you thought of during the second portion, we'll have time for general questions. And then we'll open it up around 7:30 for networking for the last 30 minutes. So if you have a really specific question, about your property, that's where you can seek out any one of the experts that are here tonight and they can help you answer your questions. Like I mentioned, this is a hybrid meeting, and so we are monitoring the chat as well. So we'll be kind of speaking for the virtual attendees throughout the night. And I did want to mention again the comment card. So you should have all gotten a paper comment card as you came in. There is also a virtual comment card if you would prefer to fill one out that way, and all of the people on Zoom should have just seen that link come through on the Zoom chat. I think that's everything for our introduction. We do have drinks available in the back, so if you're thirsty, we have coffee, tea, and water available, and we will get going with our presentations. I did want to mention quick, so before I hand it off to our speakers, chapter 2 of the Rebuilding Better website is building a resilient home. And so this talks about fire-wise building. There has been some great webinars that have come out recently from the Colorado Green Building Guild. And so instead of taking up time during this in-person workshop, we're encouraging you all to visit chapter 2 of the Rebuilding Better website. That has all of the Colorado Green Building Guild's webinars on there. And then we also have a link to the National Fire Protection Association webpage. And so that has all of the information about how to build fire-wise. So all of that information is on there, and we will move on to rebates and incentives. So I'd like to welcome Rob Buchanan. Rob is the Portfolio Product Manager for Xcel Energy. He'll be speaking to you about the Xcel Energy rebates and incentives for rebuilding. Then we have Christine Berg after that from the Colorado Energy Office. She's a Senior Policy Advisor. She'll be speaking about the Colorado Energy Office funding. And then after that, we have Rick Garcia and Dave Bowman here from the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, and they will be speaking about the additional funds and grants available for rebuilding. So with that, I will turn it over to Rob. Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you all to our speakers.
Thank you, everybody. Glad to be here tonight. My name is Robert McKenna. I'm the residential new construction product manager for Excel Energy. So I'm gonna have to turn my head because we have a monitor up here. So this is a list of our incentives for rebuilding homes. These are live, they're in market. If we had to pay one today, we could. But you'll notice there's 5 tiers here. The first tier is for homes that are built in places where IECC 2021, which was recently adopted by both communities, where IECC 2021 is enforced, and you build to that code. All you have to do is make it a code compliant home, and you will receive an incentive of $7,500 from us when the home is finished. We are aware that the cities are offering opt-outs of IECC 21 to go back to 2018. If you exercise that opt-out, even if you build IECC 21 and only 21, the $7,500 rebate is not going to be available to you. And so that's the first threshold. We want to make sure that IECC 2021 is required where it's built. The next tier above that is for Energy Star version 3.2. The Department of Energy recently published a new Energy Star standard that is discreetly better than the old version. It's about, and so if you find a builder who is going to build that Energy Star version 3.2, and we get documentation of that, that's a $10,000 incentive. So we will, when the house is finished, we get all the documentation, we'll give you 10 grand. And what's unique about all these advanced performance tiers beyond code compliance is even if you opt out of the IECC 2021 and achieve one of these higher performance standards, you are going to be eligible for the advanced performance tiers. Beyond Energy Star version 3.2, we're stepping into the next one is the Department of Energy's Zero Energy Ready standard. That's another one that's been recently updated, and as that, if that's the standard that the houses meet, that is a rebate of $12,500. And so that's where we're headed with this one. That one is based on Energy Star version 3.2 and has some additional requirements, around it related to improving indoor air quality and making sure that the home is ready for PV. PV is not, like rooftop solar is not required for any of these standards. So, but for the Zero Energy Ready, it has to be ready for rooftop PV at some point in the future. The next standard is a brand new one from the Department of Energy, from Energy Star. It's called Energy Star Next Gen, and that one was introduced last October. And we moved quickly to become, I think we're the first utility in the United States to offer incentives for meeting that standard. The requirements around that, again, is based on Energy Star version 3.2, but there are 4 components to that you have to meet to achieve that. The first is your primary heating system has to be an air source heat pump. The second is that you need to have a heat pump water heater. The third is induction cooktop, which we're going to see a demonstration on later today. And then the fourth requirement is for EV charging in the garage. If you meet those standards, again, at the end of the day, when we get all the documentation that everything's been met, $17,500. And then the last standard that we're looking for is passive house. That is there are 2 governing bodies within passive house. We accept either of them. One of them is PHIUS, PHIUS, and that is the Passive House Institute of the United States. And the other is PHI, the Passive House Institute. They made it really easy for us. If you meet either of those standards, if you get it designed and built to those standards, and you get to a point, historically, the actual certification has been very challenging to get for either of those. But if we've worked directly with FIAS and PHI to define kind of an earlier hurdle that we're confident that we're confident that it'll qualify or achieve certification. If we get the documentation of that, that's $37,500. And so that's the dollar value we're putting out there is reflective of the difficulty of getting that standard. I want to make that really, really clear. Okay, we can go to the next slide. The process is to pick a performance standard and a rebate amount that you're interested in achieving, and find a builder who's willing to do that. We're still working on putting together we're working on branching out our builders, making sure we can find enough to make sure to meet the demand for all the houses. We have pre-qualification. We just finished our registration claim form the other day. I brought copies of that with us today. The registration form is something I'd encourage you to work on with your builder and their rater, or if you're going passive house with a consultant to get us to provide the documentation around that registration. As far as when you should register, the registration probably I would encourage you to get to a point where you're pretty settled on your home's design and the standard you want to meet before you submit that. That's just me encouraging you to make sure that what you want is what we're going to deliver, and so that's strongly encouraged. The pre-qualification, the registration is optional, but strongly encouraged for every standard except for passive house. We are requiring it for passive house because, again, we really don't want people to be disappointed if they try to achieve that standard and then fail to, because it is different. And then when the house is complete, the submission, the aggregation of all the documents and the submission should be handled on the builder side. In my mind, ideally, at the end, when your home is finished, you sign your claim form, all the documentation is already there, give it back to your builder, give it back to your rater, they'll get it to us and we'll be able to pay out. And so we're working on getting that piece finalized as well. And then we've had a lot of questions come back to us. The first is that the rebates do not stack. If you elect to find a builder who's going to do FIAS requires Energy Star 3.2 and Zero Energy Ready as part of their standard. So you do not get 10,000 plus 17,000 plus 37,000. You get the rebate will be reflective of the highest standard achieved. Okay. The other thing is we want to be really clear that rebates may not cover the full cost of upgrades. We didn't design them that way. I had a conversation with a homeowner 2 weeks ago now. And we want to be really clear that we don't, if you find a builder for whom it covers the full cost, congratulations, but we didn't design them to do that. And we want to make sure we're really clear that shouldn't necessarily be an expectation. And then the last one, and I've mentioned this on a couple of occasions, is that PHI and FIAS, they can't be met without additional designer and builder training. If you're talking to a builder and you say, I really want to get this passive house, and they say, sure, we got it, be really careful with that. They probably don't if they haven't gone through, if they aren't passive house certified by either of the governing bodies. So that would be, that's a cautionary really for you guys to make sure that we aren't setting ourselves up to be disappointed in the long run. There's a handful of useful links. They don't really help you where we are right now, but we'll get those distributed. So you can find, most of these are going to link to information that by and large is going to be relevant for your builders, your raters. But it's a resource for you to be able to, for you to put it on the table and say, these are the boxes that you need to check to build the house that I want. So that's what these links are for. All right. And I'll hand off to Christine, who's grabbing some water real quick.
Oh, got it. Got it. You were quick and efficient. Thanks, Rob.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'm gonna jump in real quick. I'm Robbie Schwartz. I'm the new home building advisor for Boulder County. And I just wanted to add two things to what Rob said. One, if you have questions about what these programs actually mean, you can reach out to me. And two, Rob mentioned that it's hard to meet some of these above code programs. But if you're shooting for those above code programs, you're going to already meet the 2021 ICC. So you should be permitting under the 2021 ICC to at least lock in the potential of getting that $7,500. Then you're shooting to get the other incentive payment there, but you want to make sure that you permit under that code in order to at least fall back and potentially get that rebate.
And Rob, can you confirm that that's what you meant when you said if you submit for 2018, you can't then?
Right, if you do opt out of the IECC 2018, the $7,500 here is no longer available to you. All the advanced tiers are still, if you find somebody who can do that.
Thank you. I think we're holding off for questions till later. Is that right, Kayla? Yeah.
Yep.
I'm Christine. I'm Christine Berg. I'm from the Colorado Energy Office. I just lived down the road in Lafayette. It's really been such a pleasure to be able to figure out a way for the state to help support you in your rebuilding, particularly as I'm going to steal this term. It's like building back, but it's also building forward and making sure that you have homes that really can be climate ready. So we did pass the Colorado Disaster Preparedness and Recovery Resources Bill, which is very wordy. And you're going to hear more about the second component of that bill from the Department of Local Affairs tonight. But it does cover all state declared disasters from 2018 and into the future. We received $20 million. So that's wonderful. And there'll be additional programs coming from our office. If you have ideas about things that you think we need to be supporting, we're looking at electrification and high performance homes, please talk to me about that. Next slide, please. So this is the big announcement. We do have we're calling it a rebate. It's going to function very much like the Excel rebate. It's $10,000 for high efficiency electric homes or long-term rental units. That's kind of a distinction there, that are built to the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code and or Boulder County's Build Smart standards. So whatever the current building standard is. And needs, so there's 3 requirements. So I didn't want to parse this out. Got to do these 3 things, which I must say is very similar to the Excel rebate for Energy Star, new certification. So those 3 components are the same essentially. So an electric resistant or induction stove, heat pump water heater, and NEED certified cold climate heat pump. We want to make sure that the heat pump you're putting in is the most efficient and makes the most sense for the climate, and that you don't have to think about backup, right? So can be combined with any Excel rebates, which is exciting. We're working on the application, and then just as an addendum, incidental gas use is permitted. We're not saying you can't have any natural gas. We understand you might want a gas stove, a gas fireplace or an outdoor grill. We understand that. And that's incidental use. Those don't use a lot of energy, right? So they're kind of seasonal. So that's kind of where the program's at. We are going to work to get the application live, and we're working very much in partnership with the jurisdictions to ensure that that's again a streamlined process. Imagining that you might go into the permitting office and you'll just fill out one quick form that says, yes, I'm going to do these things. And we'll get that check after your house is built. So this is the beauty of this, because you can actually use the Excel rebate along with this for this particular, like I said, the Energy Star new certification piece. That's $17,500 in addition to the $10,000. It's $27,500. I'm good at math. So that's, I think, a beautiful incentive for you to think about. And certainly as we develop the program, let me know if you have questions, but we're excited. And like I said, there's other funding that we can be looking at as well. So if you have other ideas about things that for high performance homes that make sense, that the state can help support, please let me know. And I think that's it. I'll hand it over to Kayla.
Thank you, Christine. And we'll bring up Rick and Dave from the Colorado Department of Local Affairs. Rick Garcia is the executive director and Dave Bowman is the deputy director. So take it away.
Thank you, Kayla. Good evening, everyone. As Kayla indicated, I am the executive director of the Colorado Department of Local Affairs. Our role is working with local governments throughout the state. One of those many roles is working with local governments post-natural disasters. We've worked with many post-fire, floods, tornadoes, in the natural disaster space. Been here before, making a short presentation. Dave Bellman is actually a program manager. He's the deputy director of our division of local government. He'll be doing a more formal presentation. But what I did want to at least share with you before I turn the mic and the presentation over to Dave is that Department of Local Affairs continues to be directly engaged. We've been involved with the Marshall Fire response and recovery since the time it's impacted all of you. And as Christine Berg just indicated, we've been part of the Senate Bill 206 legislative process. There's a piece of the bill that is related to resiliency and rebuilding. And that's the portion that Dave's going to talk about tonight. In fact, just this morning, we released a press release outlining how this program is intended to work to benefit the households that have been impacted, primarily those who have been underinsured or need additional resources to build back. So that's what this presentation is about. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dave.
I'm going to stand over here so I can kind of see the slides, but I'm going to start by giving an overview. This first slide is about the grant portion, but there's a grant portion, there's a loan portion, and we're actually going to be coordinating with the Colorado Energy Office and the Community Foundation. And the idea is that all of these resources will be available at one stop. So you may be eligible for some of them and interested in some of them and not others. So none of these grant requirements limit you from accessing the $10,000 from the Colorado Energy Office or limit you from requesting an additional loan. And we also recognize that we only have $15 million for the state funding. We're going to leverage that with some federal funding. We know that's not enough to fill all of the gaps. So really the purpose of this money is twofold. One, it's for those that are kind of on the fence and they're going, can I rebuild? Or do I have to pack up and sell my lot? We're hoping to incentivize as many people as we can to get those extra resources and make that decision to stay and rebuild their home. And then for some of you, this will just be a little extra relief if you can either get a grant or a loan and make it easier to do that rebuilding and not have to dig as much into savings, and that'll be help as well. So the first portion of this is a rebuilding grant, and I don't want to get too much into HUD speak. HUD is Housing and Urban Development, but a lot of the federal funds is coming from those, and they speak in terms of area median income. And
Go to the middle, just because they're virtual attendees. I can try this if you want to look at it.
oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have 5 different levels depending on your area median income. And if you're at the 80% of the median income, then you're eligible for a full $50,000 grant. And then it sort of tapers off from there. 100% gets 75% of the grant. If you're at 120%, which means you're over the median income for Boulder County, then you're down to 50%. And then if you're between 120 and 150%, then you get 25%. If you're 150% or over, you're not eligible for the grant. However, everybody is eligible for the loan. And that leads to the next slide. So the rebuilding loan is available to all income levels. We recognize, looking at the SBA data, that a lot of people either didn't apply or they were denied or they didn't complete the process. So this loan instrument is very similar to the SBA, that it's about 1.5% interest over 30 years. So it's much more favorable than you can get on the market. And so you can access those loan funds to help you in your rebuilding. This one is, of course, capped at $50,000, and that's primarily, if you take $15 million and divide it by the number of people impacted. We just, don't have the money to fill that entire gap. Some additional eligibility considerations. This is not just for Marshall Fire. The way the bill was written, it was for every disaster between 2018 going forward. We're hoping that those funds will revolve, so if there's future disasters, we can also assist those. If you look at the 9 disasters or so that occurred, easily 2/3 of the damage, just probably more than that, are in the Marshall Fire. So we're actually expecting most of the funds to end up with Boulder, Louisville, and Superior. It is not available for second homes, vacation homes, and at this point, because of the limited resources, we're not opening it up to landlords at this point in time. If we don't have a lot of use of these funds or it revolves back, we may open it up later, depending on the demand and if funds are available. The mitigation component, we're still in the design phase of that, but we will have that out within the next couple of weeks because we want the recovery navigators that people will be going to be armed with this information as people are making decisions. It's not too different from the energy office idea, except instead of energy efficiency, we're talking about mitigation, fire resistant materials, vents, windows, those sorts of things. And we're modeling it off a program that Oregon has, where they essentially have roughly $6,000 worth of eligible incentives based on a kind of a menu. So if you're thinking about, well, I want to do those double pane windows, but I can't afford it, this might give you the extra incentive to help you, do that extra fire resistant measure. You'll see on here that we do have a link to the website, which has frequently asked questions, sort of an overview. And again, I want to emphasize that we are trying to make this as easy as possible and have sort of one door where you can apply for all of these funds, including the grant, the loan, the community foundation dollars, the CEO dollars, and we'll be putting the information out soon. And I'm sure everybody wants to know the timeline. Over the next month or so, we're going to be finalizing contracts, and we expect to have all the application available in August and September, and we're expecting the funds to start to be available September, October. So that's sort of a rough timeline. But the important thing is to get that information in your hands by the end of this month to help you make decisions on what you want.
Thank you. Thank you to Xcel Energy, the Colorado Energy Office, and the Department of Local Affairs. We will take questions on this part, but we are going to move on to our next section and kind of wrap up part 1 of this program. So I'd like to welcome Rachel Brambles. She is a residential energy advisor with Energy Smart. She was one of our speakers from our last workshop, so you might remember her from our June workshop. And Andrew Forlines, he's the culinary director from Chef AF Consulting. And so Rachel will be starting us out, giving us an overview of induction cooking and talk about Boulder County's program. And then Andrew will be showing us what an induction cooktop can do. So with that, I will turn it over to Rachel.
Hey, so I'm actually going to keep it really brief to let Andrew just jump into things, but what I will discuss is once you get done seeing his presentation, if you are interested in trying out induction for any reason, you want to see if you're going to like it to be able to achieve some of these incentives, we have a portable induction lending program that you can sign up for to try it. I will admit portable induction cooktops are slightly different than what you're going to have installed in your home, but it's a great way to see how it works and really see how it compares to natural gas cooking. And really, I've got materials back there. So once we're done, you guys can take a look at what you could actually check out and also sign up for the program. I've got some QR codes to do so and just some handouts as well. But really, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew and give him some time to talk about induction.
Well, thank you everyone for having me here. I'm Chef Andrew Forlines. I run my own consulting, chefaf.com business, where I teach people about modern residential appliances, not just induction, but all the others that are coming out and how to select and then use them. But today I'm focusing on induction. Well, you all know that it works and it works really well. I will say that I've had induction in my home for the last several years. We've used induction in restaurants and hotels for years. Put some cold water in. So the induction is different than the resistant electric, that which gets glowing red hot. The induction is using an electromagnetic field to interact with the metal directly, which means we don't have any spillover heat from the burner itself. The burner is only going to get heat from the pan back down, but it's not going to be glowing red hot. So you're not going to get anything cooked on there. It's going to stay much cleaner, much longer. You can keep it clean with just soapy water and a non-abrasive sponge. This, to me, induction has made the old electric obsolete in that this is 90% efficient. The glowing red hot electric is 75% efficient. You have to remove the cookware to stop the cooking process, right? And then all that heat is going to go into the house. Gas, indoor, residential gas is 40% efficient. So 60% of the gas you bought and are burning goes right around the metal before it absorbs the heat. That's going to impact your air quality. You've got a lot of pollutants there. The other thing that people don't realize is I work in a lot of these showrooms like Mountain High Appliance, Ferguson, Specialty, and I do consultations. People come in and they think that gas is the best, and they ask me what the best appliance is. And really it comes down to what's the best for you, for your lifestyle, and how you engage your kitchen. So you do want to approach it thinking and being curious about what's going to match you best. There's some appliances that are very high tech, that are having touch screens and automation, and then there's some that are going to be more straightforward, more of a manual transmission kind of style. So I'm just going to put cold water in here. And we're going to go to a high boil, and then we'll turn it off to show you how responsive it is. So the complaint with electric is that it's not responsive, right? This one's got a fan built in to keep the electronics cool. All of your residential ranges will have that as well, but it won't be as noisy as this. Induction comes now, 30-inch ranges slide in, cooktops, 30-inch, 36, 48-inch ranges. We're even seeing ranges that mix both, so you can get induction and gas. There's a big difference between commercial gas and residential gas. And what we see on TV is commercial restaurant grade in gas cooktops and ranges. The BTUs on those, what I'm used to cooking with, starts each burner is about 40,000 BTUs. In a residential space, you're not going to ever find anything over 25,000 BTU. Most of them are in the 15 to 20,000 BTU, and that's your high burner, right? So gas is very underpowered in the residential space. We have different building codes. All the manufacturers are different from residential to commercial because there's so much different code that they have to follow. You can only have so much heat coming out of your appliances. So that means that residential gas really is lower powered. Induction is 35,000 BTU equivalent. So almost 150% of what gas can be. So when I'm using this, I'm usually about 3/4 power is my high. Unless I'm doing a pot of water, which is thermally dense, you can go really high. The other thing working against gas is our elevation. The higher we get, the less oxygen there is in the air, the lower the gas can burn at. So you're actually getting less power and less efficiency. So in ski towns, gas is going to take 30 minutes to boil a pot of water, if not longer. Whereas induction is going to be really quick. I really encourage people to think about induction indoors for the air quality as well, and ventilation needs. Your ventilation requirements for your cooking is on how much open flame gas you're combusting in the home. Okay? It doesn't have to do with the smells and particulates. You're still going to want some with induction just for the smells, but you might have a much lower fan. If you get a big range with a lot of BTU, you have to have a ventilation that matches that. We get over 400 CFM, it depends on the county, but usually it's around 400 CFM. Leaving the house, you have to have air coming in the house. That air's got to be heated and treated. And that's a whole other HVAC system, right? Process. So you can snowball by getting a big range. And the ventilation requirement is based on all the gas BTU if you had all the burners on, which I don't know how often everyone's got every burner one, but that's the requirement. So with induction, downdraft is much more forgiving than it would be with gas. So downdraft allows for island cooking without a hood right over you. You can have it built into the cabinetry, the counter, and just pull the air down, or you can have a pop up. So we're starting to get our boiling here. And And someone mentioned that the plugins are gonna be a little underpowered compared to your ranges, because the plugin is plugging into a 110 outlet, whereas induction is 220. And then you're gonna need higher amperage than you would on a traditional electric. So you're gonna need about 50 amps is kind of a standard. So we got a boil right here, and I'm gonna shut it off, and we'll just see how responsive it is. It's hard to tell on the angle, but it stopped already. The cookware needed for induction, people are worried that it has to be induction specific. It just has to be compatible. Any metal that's magnetic, if the magnet sticks to it, it's gonna work. So iron, anything that's ferrous. So aluminum and copper do not work. Personally, I don't like cooking on aluminum because it doesn't hold heat well. It's very spotty. But a lot of your entry level and non-stick pans are gonna be aluminum based. I don't know where I was slides, should do the things. So we'll talk briefly on this specific model. With Heston Q, that's what this system is called. The pan actually has a Bluetooth thermometer built into the handle, which means the pan and the burner can synchronize and will actually adjust the temperature accordingly. So you can actually cook to temperature instead of low, medium, high. I can set it to say 350 degrees or 400 degrees. So you can really get that precision. The next step of that is that there's an app with guided recipes. So you can actually say, hey, I want this pre-programmed recipe, and it's going to guide you through it step by step and prompt you to flip food or to add ingredients and that kind of thing. So really high tech, but very informative. So it's learning as people are cooking. Some of the younger generation aren't as savvy in the kitchen, so anything to help is great. And then that technology is, not to throw shade, that technology is licensed in GE appliances. So we're starting to see some of this, startup technology get put into appliances. So GE's got that, and each one is a little different. I will say that induction across brands is very similar when they're all competing for the same customer. So it's really not what brand is best, it's really what bracket do you want to spend to get into, it better get best. And across brackets is very similar. The induction coils are sourced by one or two large manufacturers. So the brands are all sourcing the same components. It really comes down to the finish, interface, and aesthetic. So you can rest assured that you're going to get a good induction regardless what brand you're going to get. Anything I missed on induction? I think so. Yeah, so I have cards here and in the back. I do consultations. I do webinars on my website as well, doing technology in the home kitchen. My background's in fine dining. I trained in Broadmoor, came up through there, so a lot of experience with that, and we did it.
And I will have you stay up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to take one of these chairs.
Sure.
Thank you to Andrew for that presentation on induction cooking. And that concludes part one of our program. So we'll take some questions from the audience. This is anything in part one. So I'll bring up our speakers, Rob and Christine. And if someone from the Department of Local Affairs would like to come up as well, we'll start taking some questions.
All right, I was wondering if Andrew could talk a minute about the oven portion.
Sure.
Okay, first question we have, and so I'll either repeat the questions or we'll have, if the speaker, one of the speakers could repeat the questions, that would be helpful. First question is, can you talk a little bit about the oven portion of induction cooking?
Sure. So induction is the surface cooking, the burner, right? When we look at electric ovens, we're looking at, convection. We're now seeing built-in probes, so I can have a probe thermometer and I can see the internal temperature of what I'm cooking, so you can put it in and you're cooking to temperature, not just by time. So induction does refer to that electromagnetic coil, so it is more of the burner aspect. But electric ovens are, even your gas ranges, and a range is when the cooktop and the oven are in one unit. Even if it's gas on top, most of them are going to be electric. And we call that dual fuel. So electric is going to burn more efficiently. It's going to maintain a more even heat. And it's going to be, it burns a little drier, but a lot of the ovens we're seeing are not gas. You can get all gas units. They're usually less expensive, so that's one thing to consider, but, yeah, so induction is definitely the cooktop. And one thing I forgot to mention was, I appreciate that we said grilling's okay. So what I do a lot with clients is recommend the induction indoors for all the safety we talked about and efficiency, and then we can do gas outdoors. So when you go outdoors, you don't need ventilation unless you're under overhang, and you don't have that BTU restriction. So you can get the best of both. It's just about how you go about it.
Okay, additional questions. Okay, right here in the middle.
Yeah, so we talked about incidental gas usage, like your grills or your fireplaces. How do the Excel rebates take that into or at all?
So the question is about the incidental gas usage and how do the Excel rebates affect incidental gas?
There are no all electric requirements. So for any of the standards, if you have a use for gas, it's absolutely no.
Yes.
You mentioned that you could get an induction range or cooktop, but you could also have gas with it. There was a combination. How does that affect the rebate?
How about we haven't thought of that one yet? No, I think it's a like some burner, some of the cooktops are induction, some are gas.
Right, so some of the ranges, especially if they're 48-inch.
I don't think next gen will allow it.
Yeah, I'd have to ask the Department of Energy.
We can follow up with that.
Yeah, it's a valid question.
We'll have Alyssa keep a list of questions to follow up on. Thank you. Yes, in the back.
Yeah, my question is going to go more towards the state. Unlike Boulder County and Superior, the residents of Louisville are being burdened with tens of thousands of dollars in fees to rebuild. Is the state looking to kind of help off balance the burden that the residents of Louisville have to incur to rebuild, or is there something that we can apply for to kind of help offset those thousands of dollars in fees, rebuild fees that we have to take that the other counties don't, or the other places do not?
Rick's on it. He's gonna come in this one.
I wasn't anticipating political questions.
It's not political. It's not. I'm just asking,
I know
is
it's
there any
not,
way I
I'm
can-
just teasing. No, and it's an important question and one that certainly has been asked by your elected officials. And we've discussed that within the governor's operation as well as with the legal staff. And the grant program that Dave Bellman ran through is the opportunity for you to get some of those fees and costs covered.
Yeah, but those fees get distributed evenly between counties. So since we're being more burdened, the people of Louisville are being more burdened, shouldn't we get more of those incentives? I mean, why is it we have the residents of Louisville have to incur that burden while the other residents don't have to, of Superior and Boulder County?
Well, I know the question's been asked and it's been discussed widely from a legal perspective. The state cannot exempt sales and use tax. It's possible that maybe the local jurisdictions can, but that's up to the local communities to make that decision.
Okay, let's do right back here.
The heat pump required for the electrification grant, is that just an air source heat pump or?
Can I have you hold that? Oh, or do you want to answer it? Because we have heat pumps coming up next, or do you want to answer?
Are you talking about the state incentive?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the cold climate, so more specifically.
Yeah.
But that's air source. right?
To clarify,
Yes.
I don't know, you're asking whether ground source heat pump would qualify.
Oh.
To-
Like geothermal-ish. We've had some conversations about geothermal, and I think we could figure something out. Yeah, there's definitely flexibility built into this program because that is a great energy source and super efficient. And so we'll put that down as exploring like the opportunity. I think I were to be unilateral, I would say yes, because I want to get folks the best homes possible, so.
We'll go here and then right here.
The rebates.
Yes.
Last time we talked about the rebates here. Excel, going to your website, it's not clear as you go through those. Is there anything that does a bullet point? For this, you need all of this. Next step, you need to add these 4. So as we're working with a builder, this is what we're striving for.
Yes.
How much does it cost?
Yep, so the links that we send out, they're not, they don't link to Excel, but they do specify what you need at every performance level.
Is there one that, a tear sheet, we can have them say, what does it cost for this level, or this level, as we're making our decision? Or do they have to look up every one and then figure it out?
By and large, they stack on each other. So if the question is there a codified list of the requirements for each of the levels? The answer to that is yes. We haven't published, it's available, it's finished, and but it isn't, I mean, to be really blunt, it's not prettied up yet. So we have the list done, and we can absolutely provide that to you.
It would help in steering us. When
Yeah. Yep, we'll find a way to get that. Is that on Rebuilding Better? I feel like we provided it.
It wasn't.
Okay.
On your website.
It won't be, for a variety of reasons, our throughput's gonna be mostly through Rebuilding Better. So it won't be on the Excel website, but we'll find a way to get it on
Everywhere
Rebuilding
we
Better.
can find it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, if we can make a note to follow up on the Excel, the itemized Excel on the Rebuilding Better to verify that'd be great. Yes, in the back.
So for the average mean income, is that gross, is that adjusted, and what tax year will that be for? Because a lot of us most definitely haven't done our 2021 taxes because of the fire issues.
There's a whole variety of, there's more than one way to document your income. So it's not necessarily from your tax records. And typically the way it works is at the time of application, what is your income? But they might, depending on what you have and how you get paid, they may ask for your pay stubs. They may ask for taxes if that's the best answer. It really depends. You'll work with an individual case manager.
We're gonna go to a few virtual questions from our Zoom attendees, so Alyssa.
All right, so the first is for Rob, and for those that are online, they want to know where the registration form is, or did you already say it's not online yet?
It's not online. I asked very nicely for it to be put online today. That's the best I could do is to ask nicely. But we have sent it out. The Rebuilding Better's got it. We're going to be distributing it to our builders and raiders momentarily. Rachel looks like she has some bad.
It is on Rebuilding Better now.
It is on Rebuilding Better right now.
On the Excel incentives page and the builders page.
On the Excel incentives page and the builders page. So for those of you on Zoom, visit our Rebuilding Better website. Will the $50,000 loans put a lien on the house? Someone read that SBA puts a restriction on a second lien being put on a house, and they're wondering if they could get both an SBA loan and this loan.
I think most people that get an SBA loan probably will not be eligible for this loan. And the reason I say that is because the loan itself is based on your insurance gap, and most people are not going to have an insurance gap of over $240,000. So it's probably you should want to get both. But we'll get it. I don't want to give an answer that's wrong. I'm not clearly sure on the mechanics of the lien. Obviously, the value of the home is going to be part of the collateral that will make you eligible for the loan. But as far as the specifics on the lien, I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
Okay, we'll follow up with that one. Next one, are the income levels gross income or AGI?
It's going to be gross income, and in most cases, it's not based on your tax forms. There are some cases where that's the best route, but in most cases, it's gonna be just, what you make on a monthly basis.
Just to follow up on that, when you say gross income, is that dividend income? Because there's some of us that are more towards the retirement side, and we don't have a job per se, but we make money off of investments.
Does the question, for those of you on Zoom is, does the gross income include dividends, or is it purely just income based?
That is a great question to put on our FAQs. Making mental notes.
We are recording this, so like we have the record.
And we do have FAQs on our website. We will add those.
Thank you for all the great questions. The next one's for Andrew. Do you anticipate there being supply chain shortages with induction cooktops?
There are already supply chains issues with all appliances. So order them early and often is all I can recommend. Work with the retailer. I recommend the specific retailers like Mountain High or Ferguson or Specialty. They specialize in the appliances. Something people don't realize is box stores, when you buy appliances, the install delivery is third-party contract. Whereas these premium or retailers are going to have their own certified technicians and installers who are certified by the manufacturer. 75% of the failures in the first year of an appliance are due to improper install. So it's worth maybe that little bit more to spend.
We'll do one more Zoom and then we're going to go back to some in-person. And for those of you on Zoom that didn't get your questions answered, we do have record of them and we'll follow up via our FAQs. Can Excel talk about how the Raiders coexist with the builders? Some of the higher level rebate sections need a Raider, so can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, Raiders are typically contracted with the builders. You'd be very hard pressed to find a builder that does not already work with a HERS Raider. The requirement for a Raider should not be a hurdle because builders are by and large already working with them. Does that adequately answer the question? Okay.
Okay, we'll take some in person. Yep, in the back.
So following on that with the builder, the pre-qualified builders, does a homeowner acting as a GC potentially qualify?
Yes.
Do the pre-qualified builders?
Yeah. Effectively, if I'm interpreting your question correctly, please. If someone wants to basically be their own GC, do they still qualify for the rebates? Absolutely.
Okay, right here in the front. I know you've had your hand up the whole time.
Do the costs of induction cooktop and electric oven, how does this compare with electric total?
Great question. So through the cost of induction, where is it compared to other versions? So I would say generally induction, the price has been coming down. The more market share it gets, the more the manufacturers invest in providing quality equipment. I would say the induction is about in line with gas, with nice gas ranges and cooktops. It's going to be a little bit more expensive than electric. But when we think about the efficiency and the lower electricity use in the long run, that's something to take into consideration.
Thank you. Next question. Yes.
Actually, I have two questions, one for the state and one for Excel. So when you were going through that slides for the loan, you said you can't opt out of building code. So does that mean that we have to build to the 2021 code with the amendments in Louisville?
Yes.
Well, it's just the 2021.
Just 2020.
Baseline 21.
It's baseline 2020.
Whatever the current code is for the county.
Well, it gets complicated. I worked on the building code stuff, so it is baseline, yeah, sorry. I knew that, sorry, Dave. It was a long question. Gotta throw that back to the energy office. So it's a great question. Our expectation is for both the DOLA and the energy office is just a 2021 IECC, not the appendix. We understand that we need flexibility, but we do, it's the International Energy Conservation Code. Yeah.
you're parsing out like the thing and then the appendix, can you like?
Yeah, what is the appendix essentially?
Yeah.
So Louisville, when they passed their codes, I think it was in October, it included what we called stretch codes, so additional codes for solar
That
ready.
caused all the like brouhaha.
Yeah, the
Right.
brouhaha, but we do believe, because this is something the state's working on anyways, is standardized building codes, and we do have legislation that passed that we're gonna, start asking communities to start thinking about those 2021 energy codes. So every 3 years, generally, there's new building codes that come out from, it's the IECC. And so it really does matter because it is increased energy efficiency, it is long-term cost savings. And the difference between the 2018 and the 2021, regardless of what you may have heard, is a little under $5,000, and that does include inflation of about 20% because of the pandemic and all the other things that have been going on. So it is worthwhile because you do have to build at least to the 2021 IECC to get any state benefits. And it behooves you to do it also with Excel. If that's your bare minimum, you get the 7,500, which will more than cover the difference in the two.
Yeah, and then my other question, for Excel, so we're thinking of a ground source heat pump. And for your 17,500, you have to have a ground source water heater. Yeah.
No, it's a heat pump water.
Air source heat pump water. The question was,
Yeah.
so I'm repeating for the audience. So the question was, if you're interested in a ground source heat pump, does it also require a ground source water heater? Is that
Well,
your
so
question? I don't want to mischaracterize it.
Yeah, the ground source is just a preheater.
Yeah,
for your
de-superheater,
water
right?
heater.
Yep.
Are you gonna require an air source heat pump water heater for your finishing game? Is what I'm saying.
My understanding, and Robbie would probably be able to correct me.
Yeah,
when I
Robbie, get up here.
when I really misstate this,
Yeah.
the de-superheater can feed into the heat pump water heater. So
Okay.
you don't have to have, so you do still need a heat pump water heater, but the de-superheater, like you can still employ a de-superheater to pre-condition your water before it goes into the heat pump. And that's all gonna be, that'll be fine.
Okay, but you
Am I-
still need an air source water heater.
I think that'll be the expectation I think that's the expectation for this energy.
We'd have time for one more question right now, and then we can save the rest for the end.
Well, this isn't a question, but a clarification. For the federal tax credit, I think you do need the superheater. Has to be added with the system.
Right, that's so the question was, the de-superheater is required for the federal tax credit. That's for the ground source heat pump only.
Right.
Yeah, that's outside of, that doesn't,
But it's a big consideration.
they feed differently.
26% of the system cost.
Did you want to ask yours?
Yeah, just, she had mentioned earlier that you had to have 2021 code for state benefits. But for those of us who are in unincorporated Boulder County.
It's the equivalent. You guys are actually above. You're fine.
Because like, it's different on every
Yeah.
square footage.
If you saw on my slide, it's whatever the code is, and Boulder County has their own system.
The Build Smart.
Yeah,
So
you're
will
fine.
that count?
Absolutely.
Because we've never gotten clarification.
No,
that
no, no.
it would.
For all the state stuff and for Excel, it absolutely counts. If you build to the current Boulder County code.
Okay, is that
If
in
they,
writing?
if they
Yes.
haven't,
Yes.
I'm hoping I'm loud enough.
Yes.
I've never been accused of being quiet, so I hope you guys, even on Zoom, can hear me. If it hasn't been sent to you, that's our fault, but the unincorporated Boulder County code has the same opportunities as IECC 21.
We will leave no jurisdiction behind.
Yes.
Yes.
So we do need to move on right now. Hold your question, write it down. We might have time at the end for more general questions, or else anything that's written on any of the comment cards questions will be answered in a follow-up communication after this. So for the moment, we'll have our first part of our session speakers sit down. Thank you all so much. Pass it over to Robbie Schwartz. Robbie is the new homes, you're on new homes advisor with Energy Smart. He's gonna be giving us a quick overview of heat pump basics, and then we'll bring up some heat pump experts for questions.
I just come off of a camping trip, so I have to get my brain back into this. So the basis of a heat pump, and the big thing to remember is that heat pumps move energy, they don't create energy, which is a big difference here. So what we're doing is we're talking about how energy moves. Energy moves from higher concentrations to lower concentrations, from hot to cold. Is in essence of what you're doing. And it's always that direction. It never moves the other direction unless you add more energy to the equation there. So that's a big thing to think about. And so we wonder often, how are we getting energy out of really cold air? It's -10 outside. What does that really mean? And the reality is that there's energy in that air when it's really, really cold. We're just not measuring it. The system that we're using to measure it doesn't take that into account. So when we're talking from a scientific perspective, we use the Kelvin scale there. And if you look at this little picture up here, you'll see at Fahrenheit, at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which is freezing point, Celsius, it's 0, but at Kelvin, the Kelvin scale, there's 273 degrees Kelvin there at 32 degrees freezing point. So it's just an indication that there's a significant amount of energy in that air there. And it's just, how are we going to get that energy out of that air and transfer that energy from outside to inside to be able to heat our house in the wintertime there. So there's this refrigerant cycle out there that Lewis Carrier created or invented that gives us to do it. So it's basically moves that energy from one location to the other location using the refrigerant that's inside of these systems here. This maybe goes through a little bit more detail. And one thing to realize is that a refrigerator is a heat pump. You already have a heat pump in your house. A refrigerator is a heat pump, and it works by moving energy across the boundary, which is the boundary of the walls of the refrigerator, the door of the refrigerator, and it's cooling that unit there. So this is really kind of the basis of the slide that we really want to talk about, is what's happening out there. So if I have, this is a real basic air conditioning or refrigerant cycle here, where you have an inside coil and an outside coil, and you have this compressor and the evaporator. So if it's 115 degrees outside, the question is, how am I going to cool my house? Because I've got to take energy. I've got to transfer the heat from inside my house to outside my house in order to cool that house. So the magic happens at the compressor and the evaporator. So if all I have to do is make that refrigerant hotter than 115 degrees in order to move that energy from inside the house to outside the house. So it's not 115 degrees inside the house, right? So I'm pulling a cold fluid across the heat exchanger inside the house. It's picking up some energy. And then I'm going to compress that fluid. And as I compress it, it's going to raise the temperature above 115 degrees. And that energy is going to go from hot to cold. It always goes from hot to cold or more to less, right? And the same thing when I'm taking energy from the outside. Let's say it's 10 degrees outside. I need to make that refrigerant colder than -10 degrees. So I'm going to expand it. If you ever use that liquid air or canned air to clean your computer or something, if you hold that nozzle down, that can gets really cold, right? So if I expand, if I let that air expand or let that coolant expand, I'm going to drop the temperature of that coolant below -10 degrees. And so that energy that's in that -10 degrees air is going from higher concentrations to lower concentrations. And it's going to go into that refrigerant, come into the house, and you're going to be able to heat that house on a really cold day. So it's a great technology. It's super efficient because it's just transferring air. It's not actually, energy. It's transferring energy from one location to the other location. And it's super efficient. In fact, it's more than 100% efficient. When you think about a furnace, for example, a gas furnace for heating your house, if the highest I can get is about a 98% furnace. That means roughly 98% of the energy is being transferred into the house, but I've got 2% of that energy that's going out up the flue, in essence, to the atmosphere. But a heat pump can be a coefficient of performance is the way that we measure it, and it's basically over 1. If it's 1, it's 100% efficient. If it's over 1, it's 2, it's 200% efficient. If it's 3, it's 3%, 300% efficient. So these systems average at around 3 COP. So they're roughly, on average, about 300% efficient at transferring the energy, because it's not actually burning something or taking the energy from an electric cable into the system and trying to transfer that into the air, which is really an efficient way of doing it. So because we're just moving energy from one location to the other location, we're able to heat or cool your house with one device, and we're able to do it in a very efficient way. Hopefully that makes sense.
Okay, next we'd like to invite our heat pump experts up here. Thank you all for your patience. You can stay.
Do you want to introduce?
So as you all know, many of our rebates and incentives have to do with electrification for space heating and cooling, and hot water heating. And so we have a panel of experts here tonight. First is Matthew Baker. You can come on down if you would like. We'll just do it that's similar to what we did for the last panel. Matthew Baker, he is the manager of electrification, utility, and government programs for Daikin Comfort Technologies. Next, we have Brian Fowler. He is the owner of GeoSource Distributors, and so he is an expert in the ground source heat pumps. Next, we have Sean Lemons. He is the performance construction manager with Mitsubishi. Thanks for coming. And lastly, we have Bill Lucas Brown, who is the vice president of Zero Energy Solutions, and I believe will be our expert on the heat pump water heaters tonight. So thank you to all of our experts, and we'd like to open it up to your questions, all things heat pumps. Yes.
You guys talk about how a heat pump works together with an HRV or ERV, if at all?
I know Bill can handle this one as well. But yeah, so the question is how a heat recovery ventilator or an energy recovery ventilator will work with a heat pump in a whole home system, I'm guessing, correct? Yeah. So ventilation is part of HVAC. It is the V in HVAC. And so it really should be an integrated or included topic. Right? It hasn't been for a long time, but as we improve building shells and as these buildings get much, much better than they were 10, 20, 30 years ago, we also have to think about how that air comes into the house, how it moves around the house, and how it leaves the house. And there's opportunities to recover energy from that outgoing air. So an ERV, for example, brings in fresh air. It warms up in the winter. It'll warm up to closer to indoor air temperature, and then as that fresh air benefits the house and takes care of the people and ventilates pollutants, then the exhaust air will leave, and it will leave at room temperature, if you will, and that room temperature energy will be the energy that goes in to help bring up the incoming air temperature. In the summertime, it's reversed, so it's 90 degrees outside, we're going to drop that temperature down to say 82 degrees or something like that to recover some of that energy. Your question is about how does it interact, and it really has to do with duct systems and how do you move that air around the house, and whether it's a combined system or maybe it's a standalone system. It's all really part of the HVAC design, and looking for a contractor and a builder that understands those nuances and interactions is really a key point. I don't know if I covered that from your guys' perspective.
They work.
Yes, sir, in the back.
Okay, my question has to do with how SEER ratings relate with heat pumps and air conditioners, how they interrelate with each other. And what would be a good SEER rating to kind of look at, you know, a baseline and a good above baseline rating?
So the question was around SEER ratings and how they correlate between air conditioners and heat pumps.
And what would be a good one?
And what would be a good one? So I'll start off by saying an air conditioner is a heat pump. It's a heat pump that works in just one direction though, whereas a heat pump, as we use the term now, is bidirectional, both heats and cools your home. So in essence, the rating, the efficiency rating, the seasonal energy efficiency rating is what SEER stands for, is applicable to both technologies equally. There's some nuance to that in terms of how the system operates, if it's a single speed, 2-speed, or a variable capacity or variable speed system. There's some nuance to that, but essentially the criteria works just the same for both of them. When it comes to selecting your SEER rating, the higher the rating, obviously your price point's going to go up, and that's where your incentives from your utility company come into play. So I would encourage you to look at the ratings from Excel is a great example. If you have Excel as your service provider, look at the ratings that they're incentivizing you to. Code minimum establishes the minimum efficiency that you can purchase for your home. It's federally mandated. The energy codes in our state, or in our local jurisdictions here in Colorado, stack from there. Your minimum efficiency is going to be, what is it, 13 SEER? It'll be 14 SEER next year. So anything above that is going to be better than the worst that you can install right now. A good target is generally in that 17 to 18 SEER range. That's going to get you well above the minimum, but not up into the really expensive equipment. So, but again, it's really, I hate to say, but it's a bit budget dependent as well.
Let me add a quick
Yeah,
comment.
I think what's most important for air source heat pumps in particular, or ground source heat pumps, is not so much the SEER value. It's more that what Robbie was talking about, that coefficient of performance, because we're in a heating dominated climate. And so we're sizing these systems to meet the heat loads of your home. So let's say it's 50,000 BTUs on a 0-degree day. You lose that much in an hour. You need a heat pump that gives you that much. So you're trying to optimize that, and you don't get necessarily the highest SEER and the highest COPs. So you're really looking at COP more. And that system, for if it's going to heat, a heat pump is going to heat your home, it's more than going to take care of cooling, right? Because you're trying to heat that home from 0 to 70 versus trying to cool it from 100 to 70, right? You have much more power that's needed on the heating side. And so I would focus on that. And the other thing to focus on is cold climate performance. You know, both Daikin and Mitsubishi have really good cold climate performance. Canvas heat pump, and this is for air source only. Ground source, constant 50 degrees down there, more efficient, but more expensive to install. But if we can get good cold climate performance, meaning it's 0 degrees, that system can still put out that 50,000 BTUs and still have a decent coefficient of performance, that 200, 300% number. That's what you're looking at.
COP, coefficient of performance, HSPF, heating seasonal performance factor. Basically the same metric looked at in a different number. So you might see HSPF and it scales up. The higher, the better, said similarly. I'll let you pick up the last bit of that.
Oh, I don't really have anything to add to that. Maybe from the geothermal perspective, geothermal units are rated not in SEER, but in EER. SEER is basically an average efficiency over the season. So it's really, I mean, there's some controversy in the industry if it's a real number or not. Geothermal units are rated at a specific condition. It's not average. So if you're looking at geothermal, you're not going to see SEER. You're going to see EER, which is a true efficiency of that unit at a specific condition. And
normally for a decent geothermal unit, you'll see an EER of about 20 to 25. So that would be considered a good number for a geothermal unit. Geothermal units are rated in COP, that is the heating efficiency. For a decent geothermal unit, they typically about a COP of 4 to 5. So they're 400 to 500% efficient. And again, that's not seasonal, that's not average, that's at a worst case, what we call entering water temperature. The worst you'll ever see is 32 degrees with the geothermal unit. So there is a lot of confusion when it comes to comparing geothermal to air source. And lots of nomenclature that can really get jumbled. So that's kind of an overview of it right there.
Right here, sir.
What would be the cost difference between a traditional furnace and air conditioner with the heat pump, the air source heat pump? What would be the cost difference in a house?
Could you repeat the question?
What's the cost difference between a traditional, say, gas forced air with a traditional air conditioner compared to a heat pump? A lot of variables there, depends on the efficiency that you're comparing, but let's take a kind of a basic generic air conditioner, gas furnace, 90% furnace, let's say a 13 SEER air conditioner. Compare that to maybe a mid to upper grade air source heat pump. You're probably going to be about 20% higher, 20 to 25% higher for the heat pump.
That's on that, and there's lots of variables in that in terms of equipment costs, in terms of technician skill, and the multipliers that they need to operate their business at. So there's a wide range of numbers there. So it's really hard to compare apples to apples on it. But yeah, heat pumps are typically more expensive, but there are savings there that are higher. There's also different tiers as we talked about. So I know it's not the right answer for what you need, but it just depends.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to this side. Anyone? I saw some hands over here, way in the back.
Why would you choose a ground source over an air source? I know the ground source tends to be more expensive. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I'll start and then I'll hand it back over. Ground source is the more efficient system. There are additional costs in there, and I would also say it is dependent on the ground, the nature of the ground that it's going into. And so, and also the skill of the designer and the technician as well. If it's not designed or drilled properly, there can be challenges in the same way that there can be challenges with badly designed air source heat pumps.
So geothermal, the advantage is efficiency, aesthetics, all the equipment's located indoors. They're generally, on average, probably twice as efficient as an air source because they're working with a stable ground temperature where the temperature of the earth never changes from 50 degrees once you get down about 60 feet. So that's the advantage would be, from the homeowner perspective, it would be energy savings and getting rid of that outdoor unit. But they are significantly more expensive because of the cost of the loop. It's called the ground loop. To get that pipe in the ground to use that ground as a heat exchanger, that is expensive. So more to your question, what's the difference in price? Geothermal is going to be 2 to 3 times as much as the traditional furnace and air conditioning.
How about monthly cost?
Monthly costs.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you factor in what the cost of ownership is, your energy savings will typically offset the additional. So if you're going to take that geothermal system, throw it onto a mortgage, if you're going to amortize the cost of that over, say, a 15 or 30-year mortgage, your energy savings every month are going to be greater than the additional that was added to your mortgage. So you basically start from a positive cash flow from day one because of those energy savings.
Did you have something to add?
Yeah, just a little context. The critical thing when building anything is to build efficiency into the system first, right? The most efficient system out there isn't geothermal, it's not air source, it's not some magic anything. It's the system that's not used. That's the most efficient system. So build your homes right first, and code's already requiring you to do that. But to spend a little bit extra and tighten it up even beyond what code's requiring for air sealing, use a good contractor, use a good energy rater that really is helping with that. So you're reducing those loads. We install mostly air source. And I have nothing against ground source. It is the most efficient. But if you spend the money on insulation and air sealing and good quality windows, making that shell envelope tight, getting an energy recovery ventilator to make sure you have good indoor air quality and a good filter, your loads are typically so low that an air source can easily meet those loads. And it really doesn't cost that much more. It costs twice as much monthly as a ground source, but are we talking $25 a month? Are we talking $50 a month? So it depends on the square footage of the house. So you just have to do your math and talk to someone who knows what they're doing. But ground source is awesome, and so is air source. But ideally, you build in the efficiency first, and then you size the motor to get the performance out of whatever vehicle, a semi or a race car or whatever you built. So you're gonna have to size it appropriately, but put that into the shell. That's my opinion.
Great comment. The thing I just wanted to add is that's exactly why Excel Energy has the homeowners incentives. Each of those programs that they're incentivizing, including the code minimum there, which isn't a minimum, it's a good performing house at the 2021 IECC, is giving you a guideline, a checklist in essence for how to build a house that Bill just described there. So you just need to pick your level and understand what it needs to happen. And really, you don't have to understand that. Your builder needs to understand that. They're working with their energy rater, and that's why when you go back to the Rebuilding Better website, there's that big emphasis on building your team. Ensure you have a builder, an architect, an energy rater, your HVAC contractor working together as a team to achieve what Bill just described there. And you have a roadmap by utilizing one of those programs and incentive programs there.
Yes. How much does an energy rater cost?
Do you want to repeat your question?
Like I think Rob mentioned, energy raters are usually contracted through your builder there. Their fees vary by energy rater, but in general, they touch the house at generally 4 different points. They begin with an energy model to help you qualify for code or programs and whatnot, and try to understand where your base specifications are going, how those things are going to perform, and they're projecting that through an energy model there. And you'll need that energy model in order to pre-qualify for these incentive programs and the code in essence there. Then they'll touch the house. They're always available for consulting and whatnot, but they'll actually touch the house in terms of an inspection. Usually beginning, the first one is usually right after the HVAC system has been installed and before insulation. They'll do some level of inspection at that point. Then they'll inspect after insulation and before drywall. And then they'll inspect at the end of the process and do what we call a blower door test or air leakage test on the house to see how airtight the house is. And they might offer additional services like water management or other types of building science services for that builder. But that in a ballpark range is somewhere between 1,000 and 2,500 usually, somewhere in that range for those types of services.
So comparing geothermal and heat pumps, what's the long-term difference in reliability, maintenance costs? Does that play into that initial cost and savings afterwards?
So I would say anytime you get that unit indoors, it's going to be probably more reliable. It's probably going to last longer. There's been some studies done on that, with geothermal units lasting 20, 30, sometimes 40 years. There's a lot of geothermal units out east, out in the plains that were installed in the early 90s that are still running. So the maintenance and reliability costs, not necessarily factored in up front, but that's part of what's called your life cycle cost. And really, that's what matters, right? How much is that system gonna cost you over the life of the system or however long you live there? So generally, maintenance would be lower than geothermal.
Can we go to the back right here?
Well, just to
Oh,
add,
sorry.
I would say both companies standing up here have very long track records of quality manufacturing as well. So it goes back to the engineering, the quality, et cetera. You're going to see warranties in the 5 to 12-year range, depending on what and who. But we've got equipment running for 30 years. As a company, we test our equipment for 30 years. You know, there's systems running from the 80s as well. So it's not a comparison thing. It's just look for a quality piece of equipment. That's the point.
Just one, you asked about the difference between ground source and a heat pump. Just to be really clear, a ground source heat pump is a heat pump as well. It's the difference is really the medium that you're drawing that energy from. One is from the ground, the other is from the air that's outside. So I just wanted to be really crystal clear about that.
Yep, right in the back.
We've heard you talk about efficiency, we've heard you talk about upfront costs, which can be significant with the heat pump. Some of us might be interested in the time to break even.
So the question is about the time that it takes to break even with a heat pump.
So there are a number of recently released studies on cost effectiveness of heat pumps, both for air source and ground source that have been released fairly recently. I can't draw on those immediately and give you a, it really comes down, just like we can't give you a cost for any generic system because there's so many things that factor into it. But I will say that there are a number of research papers from bodies such as Southwest Energy Efficiency Projects, SWEEP, just released one a few months ago that gets into exactly that sort of thing. And I'm happy to share resources with the team here on that after this call that can be distributed as well. But I can't speak specifically to.
There really isn't one generic answer to that question because there's so many variables.
Can you give me a ballpark?
What we do with geothermal and air source is model. We model every project individually because there are so many variables. What's the load? What size system do you need? What are your rates? What are you paying for gas? What are you paying for electric? All those things come into play. So, there, like I say, there really isn't one generic answer.
Since you've modeled so many, can you give us a range?
Probably could.
I'll say this, there's lots of variables, but let's pick a few, right? You have to replace, because it's been destroyed, the furnace and air conditioning that you have. If you had to replace it in an existing home, then you're counting that cost towards the initial expense. It's drastically lower. So if you're talking about $10,000 or $20,000 of replacement cost already, and then you're talking about $2,000 or $5,000 more to add on, the cost effectiveness of that, it depends on how much energy you're using, for example, in the home, but let's say you're spending $1,000 a year to heat your house, and now you're saving 20%, now you're $200 a year. So you might be at 20 years across, now I'm challenging my own math, but $200. If you're saving $200 a year for 10 years, you just saved $2,000, right? Now you get to factor in the cost of money, cost of financing, cost of energy, your ability to fluctuate, when and how you run that system, like the Prius effect. Well, if you can see how much energy you're saving, then you might actually use more power, and actually it's not a comparison. So there's so many variables that go into this.
Yeah,
but
the reason it's kind of critical, and I know the state may not want to hear that, but from a homeowner's point of view, some of us aren't going to be around 20 or 30 years.
But hopefully your kids will. So here's just a tiny little bit of context. We're all talking about electrifying. Why? I mean, some of us were here in the 70s, some of us were older than others in the 70s. But remember all these inefficient houses in Grand Lake and these houses up in Evergreen that were heated with electricity. When electricity was too cheap to meter, that was fine. But then electricity are really expensive, and all of a sudden these electric, big giant toaster heated homes were $400-500 a month to heat, so electricity got a really bad rap. I've installed hundreds and hundreds of high efficiency gas units, but the only way we stop digging up fossil fuels and the stored carbon there is to switch to electric. Why? I can't create natural gas or propane or coal. It is a fossil fuel. It's all fossil fuel. You dig it up, you burn it, it releases the carbon. That's an issue, we think. You can see some numbers, we get some feelings that maybe things aren't quite right. Electricity can be produced from wind and solar, renewables. Xcel Energy right now, any idea how much of the electricity we're buying right here comes from a renewable source? 2%.
You're talking about nationwide, or are you just talking?
I'm talking about Xcel.
Just here?
I'm talking about the electricity that's running this light. How much of it is from a renewable source right now?
Only when there's wind blowing, maybe 20%.
55%.
Only when wind is blowing.
No, wrong. Total energy is so, and I don't mean to challenge you on it. I want you to look into this with Xcel, and we have someone from here from Xcel right now. Electrification is the only way we can continue to live the lives we want, to drive the cars we want, to live in homes that are heated with nice hot water that are warm and lower our carbon footprint. And so that's why we're talking about electricity. So that's the context. I know that I opened up a little can of worms here. And I apologize.
I have a happy
But Excel's going to 80% within 8 years. You are doing right by yourselves and the future. And yes, cost is a factor, but cost is actually quite similar for most that we found. But you are being responsible by switching to electricity.
Okay, I know we have a lot more questions, so please write your questions on your comment card. We have about 30 minutes till the rec center closes. And so I'd like to leave some time for networking. Our heat pump experts will stay up here so that you can ask your questions. We have Rob in the back from Xcel Energy, Andrew's in the back if you have questions about induction, and Christine's over here from the energy office. So if you have questions, and our Department of Local Affairs is here as well. So please ask your questions to our experts. Write your comments down on your comment card. If you want more time for questions in our next workshop, make sure you write that down. We'll follow up, and thank you all for coming tonight. You can leave your comment cards outside the room or in the back as you leave. Thank you.
We have really good team.
Sorry I couldn't get to all the questions. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a, so we